couple new members or people who are not yet members here, as well as a number of Dining for Women members and some regional leaders. I'm also, as you've already heard, grateful to have co-founder Barb Collins here, immediately past presidents of the board, Susan Stahl here, and also Cynthia and Melinda. And Tara had also said she'd be joining us. So it's great to have you all here. For new people, Dining for Women is a powerful community of women and allies engaged in education, advocacy, and grant making to build the movement for global gender equality. We have hundreds of chapters across the United States where members come together to learn about issues impacting women and girls globally, give charitably to support organizations working to empower and create opportunities for women and girls globally, and advocate for international development aid that supports women's issues. And we, of course, would be happy to have any new members. Before we get started, most of you are probably more than familiar with Zoom, but a couple things to point out. Down in the lower left-hand corner, you should see a microphone that says mute under it. If you need to mute, which is a good good idea while Deb is speaking, please do that. Then also we have the chat box, which is down on that middle of the bar. If you click on that, you can type in questions, comments, links you want to share, anything like that for us. We will have question and answer at the end, but if you could start putting your questions there, that's helpful. Then finally, if you go up to the upper right-hand corner, there should be a sort of a tic-tac-toe box next to the words that says view. If you click on that, you can create a speaker or gallery view. I like gallery because I love to see everyone, but perhaps while our speaker is speaking, we'll switch over to speaker. So just click that and it will take you back and forth. Okay, now that we have the housekeeping done, I am more than thrilled to finally meet and be able to introduce Deb Puretz Grove, a longtime member of the Orinda, California Dining for Women chapter. She is a talented artist who knows how challenging the pandemic has been on fundraising for nonprofits, especially for an organization like Dining for Women that counts on its revenue from in-person meetings to raise money. Deb came to us with this amazing offer. She has donated 28 pieces of art for Dining for Women to use as incentives to encourage larger donations during this difficult year and time. Each piece of art is valued at over $1,000 and will be given to donors who give $5,000 or more in 2020. What do we have? We have 21 days, I believe, until the end of the year, so there's still time. This is an incredible opportunity for Dining for Women because Deb's artwork is found in 40 public and private collections around the country, including Fogg Art Museum at Harvard, the Fine Arts Museum of Art in San Francisco, and the New York Public Library. Deb has a fascinating and varied background. She is recognized as an industry analyst and IT thought leader. Between 1982 and 2010, she led a market research firm in Hong Kong, founded a Silicon Valley startup, and earned a patent in social media. She's earned both an MBA and an MA in teaching English as a second language, visited over 40 countries, and lived an expat life for over 15 years. As part of earning a certificate in nonprofit leadership, Deb conducted research on the impact of dining for women. Wow, I want to be you someday, Deb. Pretty incredible. Thank you again, and I will turn it over to Wendy, I believe.
Thank you, Lynn. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Wendy Fradlin. I am the Communications and Membership Director at Dining for Women, and I have the pleasure of interviewing Deb today for your information and pleasure. And I have to tell you, it has been a pleasure over these last few weeks working with Deb on this and getting to know her a bit better, and really looking forward to sharing her and her artwork and our conversation with you today. One of the main things that has impressed me about Deb in my discussions is how much she truly cares about the impacts that COVID is having around the world. Not just those who have been suffering from the illness or died from the illness, but those secondary impacts and the fact that millions of people are going to be pushed into extreme poverty in the coming weeks and months and through next year because of the impacts of COVID-19. And as we know at Dining for Women, that includes a vast majority of that group that will be pushed into poverty is women and girls, who are always disproportionately affected in crises such as this. So as she began to think about how she wanted to use her artwork to give back, she produced this brief little video that I think is a nice heartfelt message to start off about Deb's intentions, and it also gives you a nice little view of her work. So I'm going to play that. It's fairly short, and then we'll get started with our conversation.
I'm very concerned about the number of people that will be starving or close to starvation. And because I can't afford to give away a lot of money, I would like to give my art. This is what I can give. Nurses give their resources, their talent, their experience. Doctors do as well, paramedics. That's not what I trained in. I can help by giving away my art. This is a body of work from 1998 going forward. And here I used 4 plate prints. Some of them were rejects of actual silicon wafers, and some of them were based on engineering drawings. They're all 20 inches by 20 inches. They show an amazing amount of detail. This is a series of works. I have about 30 of them, but 8 of them are framed here. They are made with very early wafers, some of my earliest work, together with photographs and documents that are originals. And around the time that I made these, which was about 1998, was the time when the Supreme Court first allowed electronic submission of documents, thereby changing forever the definition of an original versus copies. So I was juxtaposing the internet digital copies, which the wafers would bring, together with the original documents. I'd really appreciate your help. These are the works that are most collected. They're in 20 corporate collections and more than 20 museums. And what I'd like to do is give these away. And my goal is to give them away as an incentive for people to make larger contributions in our fight to stop people from dying of hunger.
All right, so that gives you a little bit of taste, but we're going to learn much more. But first, Deb, I do encourage everyone to put themselves on speaker view because we will be going. Whoop, let me stop this here so you don't hear that. We will be going back and forth, so I don't want to just spotlight one person. Deb, the first thing I want to talk to you about is sort of our standard question of anyone who's been involved in Dining for Women is your Dining for Women story. How did you first learn about us? Why did you get involved? Why is this a mission that attracts you?
Thank you. And thank you for the beautiful introduction. And I feel a little embarrassed. I had an embarrassed laugh there at the end because I like the video, because I think it does actually portray the way I feel and the way that I have fears for people around the world being hungry. So Barbara, you can probably correct my memory along this way, but way back when Linda Alapin started the Global Women's Leadership Network, I knew her. And she was she's the one that started an organization to help women leaders around the world. And I don't know whether it was you, Barbara, or it was Marcia that joined it, but that's how I first heard about Dining for Women. And so I had known about the organization for a long time. And then when I did my certificate in nonprofit management, I chose 2 organizations to study in depth for all of my case studies. And one of them was Dining for Women. So I conducted interviews. I looked at the grantees. I looked at the breadth of the organization and how far they had come. And I calculated out how large an income they would have by demonstrating their leadership. These grantees would have by the women involved demonstrating their leadership to their daughters, their sons, their sisters, their brothers. And I thought it had phenomenal reach. And the second thing was that as a nonprofit, and here I was studying the financials and fundraising and stewardship, it met all of my expectations of being lean and mean. And by that, I mean, there was no wasted money. You know, people just gave and gave and gave, but there was no wasted money. And as I'm not really a long-term member of the Orinda chapter because I've moved around quite a bit in the last decade, but the people there are the epitome of the way you would want to be in an organization. My little chapter, most of the people have 10 times as much money as I do, but I never feel like I'm not giving enough. I like the way that I put my check in a little box and nobody ever talks about what they give. And that makes me feel like what I give is enough. So when this all started with COVID and I was going to be at home and I was going to be sitting and watching TV and all these old movies and sitcoms from BBC, I thought I better get organized here to do something creative. And then once I had done something creative, then I said, oh my gosh, now what do? I don't need more art around my house. And that's how this started.
Thank you so much. And was there a particular point where you said, you know, I want to donate my artwork and I want to donate it to Dining for Women?
When I started out, I was very focused on what I wanted to do, which was to make sure there was food for everybody. I spent 3 months in Jakarta back in 2011, and it was interviewing people who were impoverished. And I walked into a house where there were 13 people living in an upstairs and downstairs cement block. And these gorgeous 3 daughters would go outside and they would sell baggies full of soup for lunch. And that's how they made a living. And I was worried about them. And how could I translate what I was doing here when I had plenty of food to eat and a Trader Joe's down the road, you know, to what I wanted to do for them. But I approached a few places that were adjunct to food banks, and they have a lot of rules that they have to follow, and so they couldn't do what I wanted to do. And finally, I said to myself, I'm going to go to Dining for Women and see what they can offer. And speaking then with Beth Ellen, it was, well, we can't promise you that it's only going to go to hunger programs. But we can promise you everything you already know about us, which is, you know, it will go to people who will use it wisely. And I thought, okay, because this is an organization that can push this forward. And why am I sticking to what I narrowly think is best? That's like really stupid. So I was just so happy that Beth Ellen was open about it and open to the ideas about it. And together with Wendy and the board, I guess, they had a bigger vision than I did, actually. And as somebody with an MBA and a certificate in nonprofit management, I went, whoa, okay, let's go for it. So ever since then, it's just been so delightful to work with everybody. And I hope that, well, I know this is achieving my dream because we're here today. But my greatest hope is that we help you to close the gap on that $400,000 goal, because that would make me feel like I used the last 8 months intelligently.
Thank you. We're thrilled that you did decide to work with us on this. So let's get into your actual artwork now. And I want to go back to 1991, and you were given these 6-inch silicone wafers. And we already have a question in the chat. What are you talking about, wafers? You know, And these were rejects from the silicon chip manufacturing process. So you get this, and how do you set off on your path of using them for your printmaking?
Okay, so first of all, I have some examples of chips. These are the 6-inch wafers, and each of these funny little squares were prototypes of the little teeny tiny things you now see when you pull out the innards of your cell phone. And back then they had texture because they were gross, if you want to put it that way. I don't think that's the right adjective, but what I mean is that they had enough texture to hold ink. Nowadays, they're 20 times. You know, you've heard of Gordon Moore, and he said, you know, we double the power and lower the price every 4 months. And these old ones, these just really, because you could touch them and they would hold ink, I thought, oh, I'm going to try these. So I had studied a lot of art. I've been to a lot of art museums around the world. And one of the things that impressed me way back in, I don't know, 85 or something like that, was this idea, which comes from the Italians, and it's called arte povera. And it's the idea that you work with what you have. And I looked around me, and at that time I was the wife of a CEO, and I had enough money to go and buy any art material I wanted. I could have worked in platinum, I think. But I said, what do I have lots of? And my ex-husband was the CEO of a semiconductor company. And these little semiconductor prototypes were being tested by Dell and by Intel and all of that. And I thought, this is what I have. So first I tried to take, you know, 2 of them like this, and I tried to glue them, and I tried to do sculpture with them. And these were going to be like the wings of an insect or a bird or something like that, but they weren't very attractive. So I had formed a friendship with Pam Paulson, who's with Paulson Press in Oakland. And she said I could come and use her new studio for about 4 or 5 days. And so I started testing them and I started printing with them. And these are the kinds of things I made first. These are exactly those 6-inch plates. And there are 4 plates on this. And the way that you do that is you put the paper in, and it's much longer than it is at the end. And so the paper doesn't move, and you move the plates around as you go back and forth. And so these all are using another thing about art that I learned in art history, which is shinkole, which is this Japanese rice paper. And by using the rice paper instead of a plate, I was able to get the texture and this added beauty of the little wisps of things that are in the rice paper. Here's another one. And here's another one. And these are very, very aggressive colors. Like, I'm not sure that I would really like them if they weren't placed exactly right. But the way that I have a vision for them, because I usually try to do them in sets, is like this one can't be too close to another one where the colors really clash, but you could have something in between it. And for that, I'm really glad that I lived in the Bay Area and I went over to UC Berkeley a lot, and I saw the Hans Hofmann collection that they have. And that's all about color studies, about what looks, you know, the same or different based on what it's near. And if you play in the games in the New York Times, there's always tiles. And one of them is about how the middle square between a little square and a big square always changes. It feels like it's different sizes because of the proximity to other colors is what changes that. But anyhow, that's what these are about. And this is where I started. Then after a while, I got these rejects. And these were a joint venture with Corning Glass. And so this is bendable, very bendable and light. And I used these for many of the works. And in addition, then I got the engineering drawings for these, and I was able to make big ones because using drawings, you can then, with a photographer, make larger images of the same. And so I made these 6 inches into this size, and that's what you see in the works that are with colors that we can go into again. And that's what gave me all of the flexibility to make many different images with not very many originals. But once I had the engineering drawings, then I could use acid etching to make plates that were made on copper. And copper goes back to the 15th century as a printing material. You can make lots and lots of prints with those. So there we are. That's everything that got me started.
Well, that is fascinating. Your work is really divided in, once you got going, you had two distinct bodies of work. And I'm going to start to share some of the slides that we have. And I'd like you to talk about those two distinct bodies. Let me get this up here. All right.
All right. So the two distinct bodies are the ones that have a lot of color. And then on the other side, these which are more muted in color. And I used all these different variations that could look like newsprint. And behind me, you can see 8 of them. And this is one example. And there are 10 of these in the gifts that I made. And then there are 18 of the other ones. So anybody can choose from these or the others, whichever you prefer. But with these, I wanted to make the point of originals versus copies. And one of the things that was important at that time, as we discussed, was the Supreme Court and allowed documents to come in electronically rather than on paper. That was one thing that happened. Another was that Dolly the sheep was in the news. She was the first cloned animal. And this whole idea of cloning and originals versus copies, this was floating around in my brain. And then the third thing was that there was a brand new startup, I think in Silicon Valley, called OPhoto. And they said they would take your old photographs if you sent them to them, and they would put them online. And in a very terrible sort of financial, I don't know what, debacle, I don't know what else to call it. They went bankrupt overnight, and the site went down, and people who had destroyed their original photographs of their grandmother or their great grandmother, whoever, they lost them because they didn't have the digital, and they might not have had the originals, or they might have the originals and they were torn and there wasn't any, maybe they hadn't purchased any, I forget what the software is called, but anyhow, Adobe, autocorrect or whatever to edit their photos. So they were lost with nothing. There were a lot of people that lost their family photos that way. And so when I did these, I decided I was only going to use original photos, probably from between 1900 and 1940. And this idea of these plates representing computers and digital form and extended human memory, because that's what they are. And this is a visceral form of these concepts of what computing is. That's why each one of these is a monotype, because I didn't make copies of the photos. I didn't make copies of those letters. If that says it's an 1894 letter, it is. And it's in ink. And the photos that come from that time, they're not necessarily from the same family as the person who wrote the letter, but the photo is also from that time period, as much as I can tell.
And then what about these ones, this whole body that you've done in the more colorful?
Yeah, so I made these in series. There's a red, yellow, green, which is called Stop, Wait, Go. This is the Go from the Stop, Wait, Go. And these, I wanted to play with color, because that's one of my favorite things to do. And this is 4 plates. So there's a dark green plate, there's a light green plate, there's a turquoise, and then there's something else in there. And I don't know if it's a lighter blue or what at this point. But I decided that I would make this series, and I'm going to walk. So excuse me if this is for 1 minute. This may not be very easy to watch, but let me walk over here. on my wall here, can you hear the dog following? On my wall here, I have 15 of them. And so over here is the stop, wait, go. If I can do that. There's the red, yellow, green. And then next to it is this lime green, this orange, this hot pink, and this blue. And they're all named after the different birth years of my family members. And then I made one set of 2 over here because I thought they looked like plates, like Ming plates. I collected a lot of Chinese kitchen Ming, which is kitchenware that was made for the people working in the kitchen. I collected those while I was in Hong Kong. And so I wanted them to have that feeling of design that you can see from across the room. And then afterwards, I decided, there's some beautiful ones up there that remind me of batiks, but afterwards I decided, you know what, now I have to get creative. So I started collaging these. So I only had one of these plates because this was a trial. That means I didn't make a series of them. So I took this and started to mix them so that if you, I don't know, can you see this one and then the one above it? Sorry. There we go. And the one above it, because I thought they would look nice together. So I started to work these, even though they're monotypes. I can't reproduce those because I don't have any more of these and I don't have any more of that green up there. I started to reproduce, pardon me, I started to think in terms of series of not just one, but having 2 that went well together. And in the end, I had 50 of those collaged ones. And I think I gave you some of those as well. And they actually gave me a lot of pleasure, so that the more that I struck out and did something that was original, like cutting and collaging and mixing, at first I was afraid to do it, and then I got better at it. And so now I feel like I'm willing to cut and paste and do all these other things that Matisse did when he got older and he no longer wanted to paint and he started to work with cutouts. And I think that's a good way to go.
I can really see how putting, several together really does just make it so much more vibrant, and your wall looks absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about some of the influences that you've had on your artwork over the years. And I'll ask you first about your studies, and then I want to ask you about your travels around the world. So you studied painting and printmaking at San Francisco Art Institute, bronze casting at San Jose State, painting at New York School of Visual Arts at their summer program in Italy, as well as at the Marschaltz, I hope I'm saying that, school in France. During this time, what kind of influence, how did all of this influence your future art?
Well, by the time I decided to go to art school, I was already 34. Well, maybe 32. I took a watercolor class in Hong Kong and I liked that, but it was very childish, very naive art. And so when I moved to the Bay Area in 1988, I started to attend classes. And of course, I was learning really fast. But I was not like an 18 or 19-year-old. I wasn't like a sponge that took in everything. I identified with the teachers. So there were certain teachers that had a larger impact on me. And one of them was a completely disgusting character in real life. I heard he didn't get into the New York Times because he grabbed the woman curator by the butt on the way up to his studio. And so he never got in. But his name, Sam Chakalian, he taught me a lot about color and brushstroke and how to work with abstracted visuals. And so by this time, by 1988, I had already lived in Hong Kong for 8 years. I traveled widely in Europe. I had studied abroad in France. I'd already been to that program that was in the Marshall School, I think, or the other one, the School of Visual Arts in Urbino. So I had seen lots and lots of art, and I now had to like really focus down on what was me. And what was me was a life in technology, because I had done office automation when I was in Hong Kong. So I knew something about, I was ahead of the market in the sense that I knew how to use technology tools. And then the second part of this is I had an in-depth understanding of the whole idea of computers and internet and where DARPA and all of that stuff and where it was going to go. And the third thing was I had access to these. And this is one of the things about art which people collect, which is rarity. Nobody else has these. And I recognized that. And so I was putting together my ideas, my love for color, my understanding of the way European art differs from American art and the way Asian art differs from European and American art, the idea of the mandala and the power of the center. And all of these things were coming together with me while I was arguing with my teachers, because I had a lot of life experience, even though I didn't have as much art experience. And finally, I just had to leave school, art school. And I never did get a graduate degree in that because I didn't want I wasn't interested in the degree at that time. I was interested in the knowledge. And finally, I realized I have to lock myself in a studio and just do this. And that's how I began to grow. You're muted, I think, Wendy.
I was doing so well with that. You visited 40 countries. Where did you live as an expat for 15 years?
Well, those are different places. So I lived in Hong Kong for 8. I lived in Germany when I was young until I was 9. I lived on an army base. I spent 15 months in Sweden as a student. I had a house in France for 20 years, but was only there during the summertime. That, and then the 4 months that were in Indonesia. Oh, and 16 weeks in Switzerland when I was, when I was 16. Yeah, the whole summer.
So tell us a little bit more about how seeing all these different places around the world, you talked a little bit about at the beginning of seeing these young girls in Jakarta selling their little baggies of soup. Tell us a little bit more about how these experiences around the world influenced you personally.
All right. I'll never forget a dinner that I had in Hong Kong with somebody named Chris Bruton, who was a socioeconomic political analyst. And he was a friend of my boyfriend at the time. And I told him I wanted to go to India. And he looked at me, this 27-year-old woman from California, and he said, "Are you sure? Because you're going to see things there that will baffle you and confuse you and depress you. And if you're not ready to look at it, if you're just going to go there and close your eyes to what you see, then you should not be going." And he scared me. He said, "You will see moving things on the ground and you're not sure if they're animals or if they're people because they don't have all their limbs or they're so severely scarred." Excuse me, that makes me my nose run. Or they will make you question yourself. So figure out what you really want from that trip. And he put me off of it for many, many years. And then when I thought I was old enough to actually go and see that, and I had stepping stones along the way because I'd been in the back areas of Thailand and in remote places in Malaysia and in Indonesia, etc. Then I did go, and I could watch, and I could see, a rat running over a woman's hand while she slept in the gutter in front of the train station, and I could accept that this was the world that I lived in. And then what was there to do with it? Ignore it? Go on a cruise next time? No, because what I learned from my personal culture is you repair the world. And so then it was time to say, okay, well, what can I do to repair the world? So I thought that I really wanted to give something that was not based on a value from money, but more based on the outcomes of the people around me. And I thought back to the time that I was in Hong Kong, and that there was such a cultural difference between people who learned English well and people who learned English poorly. And I decided to go for that master's in TESOL, and I wanted to teach abroad. I didn't get to do that, but I got to teach immigrants who come to California. And my guiding principle has been if I can help them to earn a little bit more money along the way because they're more fluent, they can protect their themselves, they'll understand more about their legal rights in America, and they don't have to do house cleaning and gardening for the rest of their life. That's what I wanted to do. That's the way that I could do that. And the art was just for me at that point. It wasn't for what I could do with it. It wasn't until COVID happened when I looked around and said, now all of these plans about going and teaching English in Mexico or in Guatemala or in, or in Eritrea or whatever, this is not going to work for the next 12 months. Now what do I do? Because I was afraid to go out of the house. So.
But in fact, you did use that as a very productive time during COVID. And I'm going to share the website of your COVID work that you call it. And, what insights or perspective did you gain from this strange period that we've been in and being shut in and whatnot?
Well, I have become absolutely nutty about reading the New York Times for 4 hours a day. I watch all of the videos about nurses who are going through the ICU, and I read the world section from the New York Times and the BBC, and I understand mortality at a deeper level for myself, is what I mean to say. And I can't take these artworks with me. And so if I have a limited time left on Earth, because this could come up and just snap you out of the world so quickly, then how would I like to spend my time? I can't be teaching in person. I can't be traveling and meeting people. There's so many things I can't do. So I went back to what can I do in this time? And I think that it would have less value for me, Wendy, if I just got more art to hang on my walls. I mean, I already have 75 of my works, on the walls. That would not be enough. The creative act is not enough, but sharing it makes it fulfilling.
And what's next, Deb? What are you working on next?
Well, when we come out of this, I would like to maybe teach toddlers art because I love that whole creative process. This is the only place where you can do what you want and you shouldn't be judged. You can do whatever you want and whatever you do is fine. And I want to have some fun. So I turned my art into these shoes. And you can order those on a website, but we can send that link out later on because this just occurred to me afterwards. But these are totally different, cool shoes. And
those are so cool.
Thank you.
I love those.
So there are 6 of those that I've turned into shoes.
Well, that is just amazing. Even though we've talked several times over the last few weeks, I learned so much more. I'd like to open it up now. Already we've got people saying, please share where we can buy these shoes. And like to open it up to any questions that people may have. You're welcome to put it in the chat. We're also a modest sized group that if you do want to just unmute yourself and ask a question, I think we can manage that and moderate that enough to accommodate any questions that people have.
So when
we explain the question about I'm sorry, go ahead, Len. I was going to.
It's a little bit off topic, but I think it's on topic. So Deb, when we get past all of this, where's the number one place you want to travel to?
Great question.
That is a lovely thought. I want to go back to, I would like to live in Italy because I love the sense of 2,000 years of history around me. You turn a corner and there's something that was there in 1500 and you go that way and there's something that was there in 1100 and you go that way and there's something built in the 1800s. That really makes me feel like I'm part and parcel of the whole human connection. And the second thing I want to do is go to Eritrea. Why? Because while I was in in Greece, and I was at a refugee camp teaching English, that was 2 years ago, I got completely flummoxed in a way that a seasoned traveler should not be. trying to get from the airport to Athens in the city. And the person who saved me was this young Eritrean man who had impeccable manners, impeccable honesty, impeccable generosity. And we've stayed friends on WhatsApp since then. And here's this man who's never had anything in his life compared with me, who's had everything I needed. And if I tried to give him $30 because I thought maybe it would help him, he was living on 100 euros a month with 6 other people who had come across the Mediterranean somehow. He would never accept it. The only thing he ever accepted from me in the following 5 weeks that I was there was that I would pay for his entry into an art museum or a history museum. That was the only thing. And I've never met anybody like that. And then I happened to mention this to my neighbors now who are from Eritrea, and they go, oh, everybody's like that in Eritrea. They're all generous. They're all kind. It's that kind of a culture. And I thought, well, I want to be there then.
Yeah, I think I want to go there now too. We have another question. Barb is asking, what were you like as a child, and did your creativity start back when you were a toddler?
Well, I was precocious, I was obnoxious, I was difficult, and I started to sell my saved up bubblegum to my brothers when I was about 5. So they weren't surprised when I went and got a degree in business. But I actually do have a real answer for that. My mother was born in Germany, and my father met her after World War II. And then my mother married my father. And when my father died, I found out that he had saved a file folder of all my mother's professional references from jobs. And my mother, who was the most anti-Nazi person in the whole world, she taught me everything about being anti-fascist and caring about people and how the big lie can work, and on and on and on, all my life. And I found out that she had been a personal secretary to Hermann Goering for 9 months. And this put me in a shock that I haven't quite recovered from yet, because why didn't my father tell us? And why didn't my mother tell me? And why didn't he then throw away the file if he didn't want me to know? But what I have been able to come to terms with is my mother wanted me to be strong, to never fall for anything that was fake, to never have to be the person who had to write #MeToo, because I kept that at bay by being nasty, and to have a really strong exterior that could let me go around the world and feel like I could take care of myself, I can travel by myself, I can make this work, and I'm not letting anybody get in the way. And that's what I got from that file folder, because I can't make head or tails out of anything else.
I just have to comment on, and Barb, I don't know if you've been picking up on this. On Saturday, we had a book club meeting with Barb Collins, talking about her book, Love Norm, which was written about her father and his life lessons. And so many times through this discussion, I have thought about you, Barb, and just some parallels between, you know, what you shared and what Deb shared today. I don't know if you noticed any of that, Barb. Are you still on?
Yeah, I'm on. So, you know, it's interesting, Wendy, because when I meet Dining for Women members, they're like mavericks. They're glass ceiling breakers and leading the charge. Like Barbara Wagner was the first woman admitted to Yale. You know, it's just like every one of us has this story of strength that seems to be passed down to our generation. And my hope is that we keep this going with the next generation. But all of us have these stories. It's remarkable.
It just really struck me. We are getting close to the end of our time. If anyone has a last question, otherwise I'm going to turn it back over to Lynn for our wrap up. Any final questions? No? Go ahead, Lynn.
This is fascinating. Thank you, Deb, and thank you, Wendy. Really just a fascinating discussion. I'm seeing a lot of comments in the chat about that as well. So officially, I'm supposed to say thank you, Deb, for the great discussion today, your generous gift to Dining for Women, and your passion for supporting women and girls, especially during this year of 2020 and into 2021. Also, Wendy is going to put into the chat box a link for you. We had another webinar, which was on Giving Tuesday, where we featured Dining for Women member Cheryl Holland, a certified financial planner, and she was talking about some of the changes in philanthropy to the CARES Act that make the year 2020 a great year to give and may prompt you to want to give from your retirement account, which is more attractive now as a charitable giving vehicle in 2020. So look for that link in the chat box if you're interested. We are moving slowly toward our annual appeal goal. I think I just heard this afternoon that we are at 314,000 of our $400,000 goal. Thank you to all of us who have already donated. If you've not yet donated for 2020, think about Deb's fabulous offer. If you are to give 5,000 and more, you will get one of her pieces of art. And otherwise, just keep in mind the women and girls who so need us in 2020. And as we move forward, it's going to be quite a while before women and girls recover from the crisis of this year. And finally, I wish everyone a safe, healthy, and happy holiday season and end of year.
And can I just say thank you so much? I am so pleased. I am so happy. I feel so fulfilled, and I feel like this has been a crowning achievement for my art. So thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Deb. Loved every minute of it. Deb.